All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Nerdy 30. We actually started this about 5 minutes ago and realized it wasn't streaming to LinkedIn. So here we are, and I believe we are now streaming to LinkedIn. This is episode 5 of the Nerdy 30, and it's a good one. I decided about 5 minutes ago that this was going to be a Christmas-themed Nerdy 30, so I grabbed my Christmas sweater. And it has stockings that are removable, and each one of these stockings have Christmas-themed zingers in there for our special guest today. And it's going to be great. Let's stay tuned in the new year for new Nerdy 30s. We have monthly episodes starting in January. Really amazing guests already lined up. We got threat researchers, AI and ML experts, data scientists, and more. It's going to be awesome. Before we introduce our guests, really quickly here, some context on the series. If you haven't tuned into this before, this is how this works. Once I introduce our guests, I'm going to put a timer on the screen. It's going to count us down from 30 minutes. At the end of 30 minutes, the discussion is over. It's over. At the end, you will hear lots of strange noises. It's an interesting time. So you'll have to stick around to the end, but it's over. And if you have any questions, throughout the course of conversation, feel free to throw them in the chat. If you put them in the chat, we may get to them in the course of conversation, or we'll wait till the end and cover those questions at the end. Again, this is the 5th Nerdy 30 so far. If you want to check out the other ones, go to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Expel Security or /@Expel Security rather. Give us a follow. A lot of great content going up there. But today, very special session for you all, reining in cloud identities. According to our most recent quarterly threat report, Expel, which you can find, by the way, at expel.com/blog. By the way, we launched a weekly newsletter last week with our blog. You can subscribe to it if you go to expel.com/blog. You'll see a subscribe button, and you can put your email in there. You'll get a roll-up every week. But according to our quarterly threat report, 74% of the incidents our SOC investigated in Q3 involved some sort of identity-based compromise, which was up 6% from Q2. That trend is going up and to the right. It is not slowing down. And when I think of identity compromise or identity chaos, my mind goes to the cloud, where roles and permissions extend into the thousands and involve humans and machines. And beep, beep, burp. Everybody needs roles. Everybody needs permissions. It's a problem. There's a lot out there. It's a lot to wrap your mind around. So I wanted to invite 2 cloud experts to come here and help us hash this out. One of them is an expert here from within our walls at Expel, and another is a good friend of mine that works at Orca Security that spends every single day securing cloud environments across the globe with its CNAP platform. Excited to talk about this today with them. So I'm going to invite in Ethan Chen and Tim Chase. Welcome, gentlemen. Round 2, we're back. Good to see you guys. Yeah, still good. I'm glad you're still glad to be here, Tim. All right, I got a couple bios. Let's read through these. I'll hit Ethan first. Ethan spends his days thinking about cloud security at Expel. Yes, you do. Where he helps build products for clients like Visa, Delta, and Uber, particularly as AI introduces new wrinkles to the threat landscape. Previously, he advised Fortune 500 companies on secure cloud migrations at PwC. He's a Penn alum and a former sprinter who mentors students breaking into their careers. When he logs off, you'll find him doing improv near Broadway, which is awesome, making pizza from scratch or somewhere remote. He has backpacked, by the way, through Patagonia and made it to Antarctica. You were telling us, when we realized we weren't streaming, you were telling us a story about how you ended up in this situation. Can you please tell us?
Yeah. So it was a long planned trip to Antarctica, and we were there. We got stranded because there's no airport, right? Just a dirt tarmac, and the weather was bad. So we had to really squeeze out the remainder of our supplies. I remember at one point I was so hungry, I was just eating the cheese powder we had left over from our mac and cheese. And it was really touch and go, but thankfully I'm alive. I'm here. So we made it back.
I've heard stories of this happening, and it usually doesn't end well for anyone.
Yeah, usually there's a little bit of cannibalism. Fortunately, we didn't have to go that far.
That's right. Talking about cannibalism 5 minutes into the Nerdy 30 wasn't on my bingo card today, but I'll take it. And I want to introduce a special guest here today, Tim Chase, Field CISO, Principal Tech Evangelist at Orca Security. As you may know, listening to this, Expel integrates with over 100 technology tools to help keep its customers' environments locked down. One of those tools is Orca Security, the renowned CNAP that keeps multi-cloud environments safe and secure. A little about Tim. Tim has been working in InfoSec for over 20 years in many different roles, including leading security teams focused on cloud and AppSec. AppSec, Tim, I know, is a particular passion of yours. He has extensive experience working at the board and executive level to promote security and guide decision-making. Over the last few years, he's focused his efforts on DevSecOps and the intersection of AppSec, DevOps, and the cloud. He has presented at multiple conferences on the topic, including RSA and ISSA InfoSec. In addition to this, he is a LinkedIn training author, which is awesome, where he is trained to help build DevSecOps into the development pipeline. Tim, it's good to see you. Tell us, what does Orca Security have going on these days?
We've got a lot going on. I would say you had a good little intro, and I think that people are not stopping going to the cloud, right? And so obviously what we're helping do is secure kind of at the speed of the cloud, right? So whether it's, there aren't a lot of platform players out there. And in order to be able to secure the cloud, you need context, right? That way you can know what to work on and be able to prioritize. And that's where Orca can come in, because we see all of the data from the control planes, looking at the data security with the DSPM, the identities, all of that together. So we're just really helping organizations that are in the cloud or migrating to the cloud land there securely and be able to prioritize and remediate any issues they may have.
I am certain that prioritization using context is a topic that we will cover today, given the overwhelming amount of identities in the cloud. I know cloud infrastructure and entitlement management is a key component of CNAPP platforms, and so I'm sure again we'll cover these topics today. So, gentlemen, welcome. I think it's time to start the timer. Should we do this? You ready?
Do it.
You ready to get nerdy for 30 minutes? All right, let's do it. Here we go. All right, there we go. We're gonna start off with one of these. We're gonna keep it fresh here. All right. Here's holiday themed question number one. I'll send this one to let's give this one to Ethan first. Is Santa checking the list twice an audit or just bad documentation?
It's definitely an audit. Bad documentation. I feel like Santa doesn't have bad documentation. It's definitely an audit, making sure if people are good or people are bad.
Yeah,
that's my perspective.
It's a very gracious stance you have on Santa there. What would you say, Tim?
I'm with you. I'll be nice to Santa. I'm with Ethan.
You don't want any coal in that stocking, is what
I do not want any coal in the stocking. I've got a pretty long list of things, including getting a motorcycle fix that I want for Christmas. So.
Oh, very good. Very good. Yes, very good. All right. Very good. Well done. Let's kick this over to Tim for our first identity related question. There's this phrase that's been thrown around many times on many websites and many blogs that is identity is the new perimeter. Maybe the cybersecurity buzzword phrase of the last couple of years. Most people listening to this probably know the extent of the difficulties managing cloud identities. We've already covered some of it in the intro, but just to kind of level the playing field here, I'm going to give both of you 30 seconds to kind of give in your own words, look at what the issue is. But Tim, give us yours first. 30 seconds, lay out the problem for us.
The problem is just sprawl everywhere, right? The cloud moves so fast that we weren't good at identity before we went to the cloud. And we're definitely not good when we're working at the speed of the cloud and at the speed of what's coming with AI. And so when you look at everything that's out there and you consider, you mentioned non-human identities, all of those identities have to have roles and entitlements and all of that. So the problem is just to some extent growing faster than most organizations can keep up.
Ethan, what about you?
Yeah, I would say exactly what Tim is saying, right? Like all these different types of identities and just like millions and millions upon millions of like roles and the different permissions, and just like trying to map out and figure out what has access to what is a surprisingly complicated problem. And it's even more complex factoring in like the 3, 4, however many multi-clouds people have today. And it's our truly the only consistent perimeter we have, right? So like attackers aren't really hacking in as much anymore. They're logging in, right? And once they have access to that permission, that identity, they have access to everything that that permission has access to. So it becomes a real problem real fast.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. When you think about some of the recent breaches, obviously you can look in the past and see like people had left sensitive data on an S3 bucket, right? And that stuff still happens, but by and far, when you look at the way that a lot of people are being breached these days, it's because it's identity related, and there's a million different ways that can happen, whether it's through phishing, smarter phishing campaigns, whether that's through password reuse, no MFA. There's a million different ways that it can happen, but that we're seeing that so often is the root cause of a lot of the breaches today.
Yeah. People still have password as their passwords. Password 12345 exclamation point. Things like that. So that's a problem.
They do.
They do indeed. They do indeed. Before I started working in cybersecurity, I feel like I did have the same password for every account that I had, and then I started working here and realized how in trouble we all are in the current state of things. So, Tim, when you look across, when you talk to customers in your role, when you look across customer environments, maybe working with your research teams at Orca Security, what are the most common identity related kind of misconfigurations or issues that you see, when we're thinking about this?
I mean, MFA is still a thing, right? So there, believe it or not having MFA enabled is a big problem. So, I worked for an identity security company for a little while. And so I got to talk with a lot of customers, kind of see their environments when we were working on proof of concepts or fixing problems, after the fact. And one of the things that I would do all the time is just build a query to show who doesn't have MFA on at some point, whether it's through Okta, Active Directory, or whatever. And that's still a problem. Another thing that I will tell you is a problem is that most organizations cannot tell you reliably who has access to what, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're still living in this age of where our minds, I think, kind of think of user group, right? And so if Ben is in these 10 groups, do we know what these 10 groups can do? Like, that's still the way that I think, at least maybe because I think I've been in cybersecurity probably about the amount of time you guys combined. That's the way that my mind thinks. And so, but these days you can't think that way, right? Because it's exponentially more complicated, because my gut is that you guys probably have access to 30, 40 different SaaS solutions. Each one of those SaaS solutions, you're going to have different permissions. None of the SaaS solutions do permissioning in the same way, right? They don't speak the same language. Combined with cloud, right? Where you probably have accounts on AWS and Azure and all of these different places. So I think it's just really complicated. That's what I've seen.
Yeah. What about you, Ethan?
Yeah, I think to Tim's point, right, visibility is still very much a challenge. And it's, I think, not surprising it's a challenge because, like Tim is saying, it's different for all these different SaaS providers, all these different cloud providers, and just the permutation of the number of, roles and things you have is just very hard to keep a handle on, especially because it's not like just, stale and static. It's constantly changing over time, right? And I think it's just very hard to figure out, okay, what do we have access to? Who has access to what kinds of access do they have? And then making sure that, is kind of right sized and rationalized just on top of everything else that's happening today, right?
Mm-hmm. And it's not getting any easier. Like, it was one thing when it was just us having accounts in the cloud, but then the way that these clouds are created is that resources can have permissions. So like if you're in AWS and you have an EC2 instance, they can have roles assigned to them, right? So that's where the non-human identities come in to play. And so that we used to call them service accounts. Those still exist, but now it's just even more complicated. And I think the world that we are maybe living in or getting ready to live in, or as Ben and I would say, fixing to live in, is with AI, right? Like we're going to have these AI agents that are going to have all of these sets of permissions as well. And those are going to be exponential. So I think I've heard somewhere somebody say that we're at about 100 to 1 when it comes to non-human compared to human. And so just add AI onto that, and there's no telling what the factor is. And so we've got to get really good at defining these permissions and understanding exactly who has access to what.
Yeah, that's good. Is it, this is not in our list of questions, but I'm going to ask this. Is it even a fair expectation for the people that are doling out, user roles or permissions from the jump? I think about like IT teams who may be in charge of, permissioning out users for cloud environments or for other tools. They're taking in these requests from all over the place, I would assume, from all over the business. So is it even feasible for them to adequately give out the appropriate number of permissions necessary for the roles? Is that really the part that's important, or is the part that's important really about ongoing monitoring of those users and their permissions, if that makes sense? Because the thing is, like, the lowest common denominator, I guess, is admin accounts, or owner accounts. And so, but you don't want to slow down the business, right, Tim? So what's kind of the balance there?
It's tricky. And I will say the way that I've seen a lot of folks work, it doesn't work. So you mentioned IT teams, right? And historically, it's been IT teams that go in and they do the provisioning of these accounts and the permissions, but they don't actually understand what they're doing, right? They're just going to click buttons. So like if it's Salesforce, they'll go in and I guess give whatever they think needs to happen inside of Salesforce. So really, like if you're running a proper identity program, and this is where I think identity is still in this space, and Ethan may have an opinion on this too, but a lot of times identity lives with IT, but I think identity needs to live in the security realm. It's still an interesting place where it could be in either one, because a good identity security program builds out these profiles so that it's not up to the IT person that onboards Ethan when he came on to Expel. He's got these profiles that he just adds that were built by the appropriate teams, right? The revenue operations team had these Salesforce permissions that are already there, or the cloud team have these permissions that are already there for somebody who's a technical product marketer, right? So something along those lines. Like, so I think that getting it right the first time, I don't know. It's an interesting either or. It's probably just the more important if I have to choose, because we don't tend to go back and take away permissions very well. So I think building your program to get it right is important.
Yeah.
And then followed a close second by the auditing, right?
Sure.
Because most compliance frameworks these days require at least every 6 months you go in and audit the permissions to the most important to your most important systems, specifically ones that are financial related or whatever, PCI related. But I think getting it, I always used to tell people when I was telling them how to do an identity security problem, like, take the time to get it right. Let's build these profiles. It may take a little bit of time. But that hits on another topic, which could be like, why is that so hard? Like when you look at traditional identity security products, you're talking 7 figures worth of services to get it right. So that's another topic, but taking the time to do it right, I think is important.
What do you say, Ethan? Do you have an opposing viewpoint, or do you kind of share the same opinion?
I think getting it right at the beginning is so important, right? Because if you don't get it right in the beginning, you just create so much work on the back end that is very hard to untangle, right? So like Tim was talking about, with those secure baselines, secure defaults, having those kind of clearly defined baseline roles is just creates an easy, like, paved path, golden path, right, for most people to go off of. And then if you can layer on just-in-time permissions, right, that really helps kind of right-size those permissions. And then I think if you can bake in some sort of operational, like, auto revoking or manager attestation, it almost becomes automatic, right?
Yeah.
The kind of right-sizing towards the end. So I think building in those programmatic things on the front end really help just all the maintenance operational stuff on the back end.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, if I'd like to make a prediction here, I think one of the things that will help us maybe in the future is this combination of just in time with some sort of AI, right? I think that because just in time is still going to have the problem of understanding the entitlements. But if you have a history of what needs to be done and and you understand what action needs to be taken for this just in time permission, then AI will be able to do that analysis, provide you with the information you need to get the role for the specific amount of time. So my gut is like, if you look at something a year or two down the road on how we're handling some of this, I think it's probably going to be a combination of an AI agent related to identity combined with just in time to get to really help us scale.
Yeah, I like that, because I wonder, like, even if you define like a strong baseline, right? Maybe the AI agent can read that in and kind of see like, oh, this user, typically users use this baseline, right? And like on average, they maybe request these permissions just in time, but this one user has so many more permissions, right? And that kind of bakes into the context to kind of like either make that decision or flag something like, hey, there's something wrong here.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's good. Ethan, got one for you. Actually, you know what? Before we do that, let's mix it up a little bit. All right, here we go. From the middle stocking, fruitcake, artifact or threat? Tim.
Threat, because they're so hard. I would use them as a weapon. My kids will probably use it as a hockey puck. I got to be honest. They'd find a way to play hockey with it. So I'd say weapon.
Ethan, what about you?
I wholeheartedly agree. It's poison. It's a rock. It's a deadly weapon, assault with deadly force. Not
something you want to be involved with.
Yes, it's an artifact of a past age. No,
hypothetical question here, Ethan. If you were stranded in Patagonia, would you eat a fruitcake if you had to?
No, but I might use it to bludgeon like a deer to death or something.
But he said he was 2 seconds away from cannibalism. So is the hot take that he would rather do that than eat the fruitcake?
That is an extremely hot take.
Extremely hot.
I'm just trying to put the pieces together here.
That is a scorching hot take that will be a short on our Instagram or on our YouTube channel very soon. All right, let's keep the momentum going. Ethan, we've kind of skirted around this idea that identity is a verb, not really a noun at this point. It's an ongoing process. Keeping identities in check is active, ongoing. Permissions creep, excessive privileges grow quietly over time. How can teams kind of build in processes that prevent this from happening in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I think we call it a verb here because it, like we've been talking about, takes constant action, right? You can't just set and forget it. I think that really comes down to, building it into the operational rhythm, right? So like Tim was talking a little bit about recurring access reviews. I think that's really important, right? Especially if you kind of take a look at admin kind of accounts and privileges. You definitely want to do those kind of leaning more towards the quarterly side and the annual side. And then just think, kind of what I was talking about with those manager attestations, right? Where like your manager says you still need those permissions and then just auto revoking, right? If nobody replies, right? Because, if people don't really need that permission, they won't say anything, right? So if it's important, somebody will speak up, right? So I think that's like one thing, right? And I think another thing we haven't yet touched upon is just like the whole process with lifecycle management, right? The joiner, leaver, movers, right? As people move between different jobs or quit their jobs or join their jobs, it's very important to get the account set up and the permission set up also in the right order, right? Because if you get it in the wrong order, sometimes you'll have accounts that are kind of just like orphaned there because, the steps were in the wrong order. So I think those are like the two biggest things. And last thing I would just say is just, making sure it's in the culture itself, right? So making it easy to request elevated permissions instead of like a wholesale admin account that kind of just sits there, right? And then also just celebrating those teams that are reducing permissions and making it something to be proud of rather than something that's just annoying.
Yeah, makes sense. Tim, anything to add to that?
No, I like that. I'm always a big fan of anytime you can bake it into the culture, right? That's going to be the change agent is not making it hard on people, making it something that they don't mind doing, right? And so, and obviously, celebrating with those teams, and I think in order to do this successfully, I believe you have to have a dedicated team. Like
Mm.
and I know it's not always possible if you have a small security team at smaller organizations, but at scale, like you need to have someone that's always on top of this. It's not something that you can do and then come back in a month and check how things are going or anything like that. You really do need at least like one person dedicated to it, because if you're not modifying the mover, joiner, leaver process, you're doing the auditing and you're building the access reviews. Like I can tell you that people still do access reviews in spreadsheets more commonly than you would think.
Mm.
And so you've got to move past that. You've got to build that into a repeatable process, and just having dedicated resources to do it is the best way.
Yeah, I think the repeatable process thing is like the most important, right? So it's not just, you don't just like say, here are all the initiatives I'm going to do to help, fix this problem. It's about defining, I think, the systematic things that kind of have this feedback loop, right? To keep it sustainable and also make it easy for people to do things, right? Because it's not just about making things most secure. It's about, like you were talking about earlier, Ben, making things secure without reducing, getting in the way of the business, right? So as long as there's a feedback loop that makes things easier for people, people are more incentivized, more interested in doing these kind of things, and makes it easier on everybody, right?
Mm. Yeah. Tim, one of the things that Orca does so well is, cloud coverage across cloud providers, multi-cloud, if you will. Obviously, I would say a huge majority of companies these days are working across multiple clouds. From your perspective, how should security teams think about entitlement risk across multiple clouds? Do those challenges differ meaningfully between the different clouds? AWS, Azure, Google, even, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, go down the list. Like, are the challenges different? Like, how should we be thinking about this?
The challenges are not different per se, but the clouds behave differently, right? And so what I'll say is that if you don't have a solution like Orca to help, you're going to be in trouble, because they're all handled the same differently. So
Mhm.
like the way that AWS does identities is completely different from Azure, which is completely different from Google, right? Google still ties their identities to Workspace, right? Azure to Active Directory. Like I'm not saying any of that is wrong, but they're just different. So if you're having to maintain that and understand identities across multiple cloud providers by yourself, you're going to be I think you're going to be in trouble. I think you're going to find it's going to be a lot of work and more work than it's worth. So that's why you need something like Orca that understands how each cloud speaks and can almost translate for you. Where
Mhm.
we can, if you want to look at the KIM for GCP or the KIM for Azure, we got you. You don't have to worry about translating how each cloud provider does resources and how sorting through the appropriate, CloudTrail or Azure logs or whatever it happens to be. So I think that, that's when something like Orca really comes in, when you're starting to get to that multi-cloud security, whether it's, CSPM, data security, whatever it happens to be. In this case, identity security, that's where you need something to help you a little bit.
Yeah, I would say, like, because of the way they model things differently, right? And some of it's kind of or like kind of based off of other pieces of existing infrastructure, it introduces like a bunch of little quirks, right? That if you aren't, an expert in, say, Azure or GCP or Oracle, you may not be aware of, right? I mean, even here, when we were making our detection strategies, we have to be very specific about how we do it for each cloud, right? So like if you're going to apply an AWS playbook, you don't want to use it for Oracle Cloud as well, because there are just some small things there that may catch you by surprise if you haven't worked it deeply in that cloud before.
Yeah, that makes sense. Ethan, identity detections, a lot of times the cloud environments are so noisy. There's always stuff going off, and identity detections, could often drown in noise. What is working right now from your perspective in terms of filtering signal and kind of helping spot identity abuse earlier and sooner, so that we're kind of hopping on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. They're very noisy, and we want to make sure our SOC isn't drowning in that noise, right?
Of course. Yeah.
We're doing a bunch of different things. Of course, one thing we're doing is AI, of course. So one thing we kind of take a look at is, can we provide an additional disposition or decision on some alerts before we hand it off to our analysts, so they can have a jump start in terms of why our AI kind of thinks something is benign or malicious, and which signals kind of correlate to that decision. Beyond that, the second thing we have is just having our AI essentially look at the alert as it comes in, kind of making a decision on what other additional context it needs, and then just going out and grabbing that context automatically, right? So before our analyst even looks at the alert itself, all this context is being brought in. And once they open that alert, they've got everything right there to kind of make that decision quickly. Another thing we take a look at is, beyond just the identity alert itself, right? Because just looking at it in isolation can be a bit tough to figure out if it's malicious or not, right? If somebody is logging in at a weird time, is that, because it's malicious or because they're traveling somewhere, right? Hard to tell. But if we correlate with, say, SaaS and endpoint and cloud and all these other types of signals across the environment, it makes it a lot easier, right? So if we see that same login and then we see unusual file downloads and then a new inbox role, it's probably malicious, right?
Yeah.
And we've done this at scale, right? So for like a Fortune 50 customer, we've turned 15 billion raw events into just 35 investigations. So that's just a couple of ways we've really kind of targeted this problem for our SOC.
Tim, tell us how do you at Orca, how does your platform sort of surround those identity signals with context to help you prioritize which ones are probably the most critical?
Yeah, it's all about data and having data to support it, right? So a couple of different ways. If we've got identities, just understanding the historical aspect of what that identity is doing is key. Typically, I'll make a little bit of a general statement that most of the time workloads in the cloud tend to do the same things or similar things, right? It's not like they're going in there and every day they're doing something completely random and completely different. And so when you start to see deviations from normal related to these identities, that's a key. So being able to understand that and raise awareness of, hey, like you've got this machine here that normally is a introvert, but now he's all of a sudden very much an extrovert and he's talking to these 10 machines over here. Like we might want to look at that, right? And the other thing that I would say is being able to prioritize based on what those identities can do. Yep. So if you've got identities, if you have identity risks, maybe they think you potentially over permissioned. It could be MFA, whatever it happens to be. You got these identity risks. Being able to help you understand the riskiest identities are the important ones. Obviously, you've got, your administrators that are going to be important. But what about those ones that have access to the sensitive data? What about the ones that have access to the customer data, the PII data, right? Or the ones that have a ton of permissions to all of your databases, right? So being able to understand the whole context of an identity, like the permissions they have and the data they have access to, I think is where Orca can really help, right? Which is similar to, I think, what Ethan was saying with Expel is you can correlate across a bunch of different platforms, and we do it across the cloud and the data in those different factors.
Yeah, it's all about building out the whole story, right? Yeah. It's impossible. There's just too much going on for you not to be able to do that. You have to see where everything is going, what identities are capable of what, of doing what, and kind of go from there.
And that's why we're both good at what we're at, right? Because I think these single point tools just don't do it. If you've got 10 different tools and you're just getting all these alerts, whether it's to a I don't know, vulnerability management tool or something along those lines, like it's not going to help. But having everything come to one place where you can centralize, you can get entire context around it. That's the only way to come up to breathe, right? We've heard that from so many people of like, I was drowning in alerts, but now that I can look and see what's external, what's exploitable, and it's attached to sensitive data, like that helps me, take everything down by 90% to know what I got to fix first.
Yeah, for sure. We got time check 3 minutes left. I want to hit this one because it's kind of a looking forward sort of question. We're always here at the end of the year reflecting on what's behind us and looking forward to what's ahead. So let's do that. And I'll kick this one to Tim first. So thinking about trends in cloud identity, I think, and again, we've already talked to some degree about trends, AI, all of that stuff. But what trends in cloud identity, good or bad, do you expect to accelerate over the next 12 to 18 months? It's kind of an impossible question to ask these days with things changing as much as they are with the advent of AI tools. But curious what you have to say there, Tim.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I think that it's going to explode. I was just talking today with one of our execs, and we were both just kind of talking about how identities exploded once we went to the cloud, and now we're going to have this huge other explosion now that AI is here. Like machine learning, we've already seen, or machine identities, we've already seen help everything take off, and now I think AI is going to take it to the next. So we're just going to have an influx of stuff. So on the flip side of that, related to identities, I think we're going to see AI help us solve this problem more, because it's going to be almost impossible to solve without it. And I think it's going to solve it we talked a little bit about, JIT and AI working together. I think that Kim, cloud infrastructure entitlement management, and AI are going to work together to help you understand entitlements and where you're over permissioned and how to fix those. And then I think even these security agents are going to help as well. So we've seen a few of them out there today that do some of this automated work. And I think some of them will be fixing some of the identity related issues that we see.
So AI is going to add to the problem, exacerbate the problem, and fix the problem, which is amazing. Ethan,
and we haven't even talked about the attackers. We haven't even talked about attackers in AI. We're just talking about how it places security.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting if it's going to make things on the whole net worse or net better.
TBD.
TBD.
Yeah,
it's going to be interesting.
For sure. Anything else to add, Ethan? Any other predictions? You got 30 seconds.
I know, with 30 seconds left, go off. I think one thing that keeps me up at night, or like I think about a lot, is just better social engineering and phishing, right? I mean, beyond like making them more convincing, I feel like with all the data leaks of the past like 10, 20 years, they can just feed all that information and make it very customized to an individual that just makes it so much more convincing. And I worry about that, to kind of get in initial access, and then who knows what they do once they get in there.
Yeah. And with that, 2, 1.
Game over.
And that is okay. I got to remember to press the stop button on that sound effect there. That's the fun collection of sounds there at the end. Hey, that was great. I appreciate that session, guys. I thought it was really enlightening. And I mean, it sounds like identity will continue to persist, but it seems like there could be some light at the end of the tunnel here with some of the new tools that are coming out. It'll be really fascinating to follow. Anyways, actually, you know what? Let's do this. Final question here. I got one left. We're going to cover this real quick, and then we're going to sign off. I didn't see any questions from the audience. I'll say this. If anybody has any questions after listening to this session, feel free to reach out to us. Leave a comment on the YouTube video that you are watching on demand right now, and we'll follow up with you about that. And if it makes sense, we'll follow up with a blog post, maybe in partnership with Tim or somebody else from Orca. But here's my final question. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie, and why is your answer yes? Go.
Yes, because it's awesome.
I
think it is.
I think it's awesome too, man. I agree. Ethan, what do you say? Why is your answer yes?
I say so. I think I saw recently that, I don't know, I think Alan Rickman was making a joke about how he was still in recovery from Bruce Willis, like kicking him out of that window or whatever. Right?
Out of the window?
Yeah.
They took him by surprise. He didn't know that was going to happen. That's why his face looks like that. So.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, 100%. He had no idea that was going to happen.
What?
That's why his surprise is so real.
That's
crazy. I mean, obviously he didn't really fall down in Nakatomi Plaza, but
of course. Yeah, of course. It's funny. I showed my kids. We've watched Home Alone 1 and 2 so far this holiday season, actually back to back on nights. And
Makes you
Home
feel like
Alone,
a good parent, doesn't it?
it
Like,
sure
makes
it
you feel
sh-
you're
dude,
like, I'm actually doing okay. Sorry.
familial dysfunction to the nth degree. I'll say this: Home Alone 1 is great, and you can suspend your disbelief to some degree in terms of the pranks that he's pulling off. Home Alone 2 just goes off the rails. But even before they go into the house to go get Kevin, Harry's been hit with 5 bricks in the forehead, thrown from like four floors up above this condo building. It's not good. So, anyways, all right. Well, hey, very happy holidays to everyone watching or watching on demand. I hope you did have a happy holidays by the time you're watching this. Again, shameless plug for our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Expel Security, and for our blog as well, expel.com/blog. Check out Orca Security for all the amazing stuff that they're doing. Tim, appreciate your time today and lending us your expertise. We should do it again.
It was fun. Thanks, you
It was
guys.
fun. Thanks,
Yeah.
Ethan. See you
Thank
guys.
you. Bye.
All right. Bye.